It's an honor to be here, and just wanted to acknowledge all the senior devotees who are on the call. Adi Purushabhu, it's so nice to see you. And it's nice to see everyone. I do join very often on YouTube. And so I see this as a very special community group that I see where there's a lot of intimacy, and that's what I really appreciate about this Srimad Bhagavatam class is that the depth and the intimacy. So we will try to speak something, and so we'll go ahead and start with Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 46, verse 41 to 43. So I will go ahead and for the sake of time, I will read all three verses, and then we will share a little bit. Yata pramrika drishtya pramyatviya mahiyate chitte kartari tatratma kartaveham diha smitaha. Just as a translation, just as a person who is whirling around perceives the ground to be turning, one who is affected by the false ego thinks himself the doer when actually only his mind is acting. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives a parallel idea. Although our happiness and distress are caused by our own interaction with the material qualities, we perceive the Lord to be their cause. Text 42. Yuvyayor evi navayam atmajo bhagavan hari sarvesham atmajo hit atma pitamata so ishvaraha. The Supreme Translation, the Supreme Lord Hari is certainly not your son alone. Rather, being the Lord, he is the son, sole father and mother of everyone. Text 43. Tristam srutam bhuta bhavat bhavisyat stanushtarisnur mahad alpakam cha vinachutyatad vastu taram navachyam sa evam sarvam paramatma bhutaha. Translation, nothing can be said to exist independent of Lord Achyuta, nothing heard or seen, nothing in the past, present, or future, nothing moving or unmoving, great or small. He is indeed everything, for he is a supreme soul. Purport. Sri Uddhava is relieving the distress of Nanda and Yashoda by bringing them to a more philosophical plane. He is explaining that since Lord Krishna is everything and is within everything, his pure devotees are always with him. So we'll just in quick invocation. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuda Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Rugana Anbitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalitam Shri Vishak Anvitam Shah He Krishna Kuruna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Kopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchna Gaurangi Radhe Vrindaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sunde Evacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for having me here today. We're seeking the blessings from everyone that we can speak something that is pleasing to Srila Prabhupada, the Parampara, that is beneficial for everyone, and that's purifying for myself. And for everyone who has joined, I may have not met most of you. Some names I recognize. It's so nice to see those that I see regularly on the class and to hear their reflections and questions. And for those of you that don't know me, I've been tied to the Bhakti Center since 2007 when I used to go to school in New York. And I have a lot of close relationships with all the devotees, especially those that were all previously brahmacharis. It's really nice to still have those relationships. And we're really fortunate again to be here. Radha Molidar is still a very big part of my life, and my heart is always in New York. So again, thank you, Anand Bihari, for having me here today and to share something. So I wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate this opportunity we're receiving every day and unpacking this 10th canto, because we're in the Srimad Bhagavatam, with this Iyamala Purana, which is a ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge. And within that ripened fruit, we are in the 10th canto, the apex or the climax of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I always like to give a little bit of context before we dive into the details. But we see here in the 10th canto, the first 40 chapters of the 10th canto, they're dedicated to Krishna's birth. There's the Leelas of Krishna being attacked by many asuras and their demise, along with many astonishing pastimes of Krishna. And then there's also Leelas of Krishna's boyhood and youthhood. So that's the first 40 chapters. Now, where we are right now in the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapters 41 to 51, this is in fact dedicated to Mathura Leela. This is a section of the Bhagavatam that we're in. So here we're now discussing this for this past couple of weeks, where Uddhava has been sent to Vrindavan by Krishna to deliver a message to the residents of Vrindavan. And not only that, Krishna wants Uddhava to see the feelings of separation that the inhabitants of Vrindavan have for Krishna. And so right now we hear Uddhava speaking to Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. And we see in this first text 41, we seeing here, one who is affected by the false ego thinks himself the doer when actually the mind is acting. For me, I very much I would consider myself a neophyte in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but I very much have a lot of attachment to the Bhagavad Gita. So I'm always, whenever I'm reading, trying to see how this is connected to something that I've read in Bhagavad Gita. And if we remember this very, very much, this verse here is connected to Bhagavad Gita chapter 3:27, where Krishna says, Praktikriya manani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimutatma kartatam iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer of activities which are actually carried out by nature. So again, we see here this analogy that this whirling around perceives the ground to be turning. I'm sure all of us have been on some sort, if we haven't spun ourselves so fast, we maybe been on a ride that spun us so fast that we know what that feeling is. And what an interesting analogy that that is written here that compares us, that the false ego is also in that kind of spin where, again, as the Bhagavad Gita mentions, thinks of themselves as the doer. And Srila Vishwanath, he gives this parallel idea. So although our happiness and distress are caused by our own interaction with the material qualities, we perceive the Lord to be their cause. And I just wanted to just put it out there to everyone else. Any reflections on this analogy or this parallel idea? How do people interpret this parallel idea that Srila Vishwanath has put forward? Because he's trying to give a comparison or another way of thinking about this. But we perceive the Lord to be their cause. Does anyone have any thoughts or reflections on this?
Sorry, just for clarification, are you looking for reflections on the analogy of spinning or on the analogy
Of just
us being the doer?
the spinning, but also Srila Vishwanath talk about these, giving the parallel idea that, although I mean there is a verse that came to me when I read this section, but just how others are understanding that we, our happiness and distress are coming in interaction with the material qualities, we perceive the Lord to be their cause. I had to think about it for a while myself.
Bhima Prabhu?
Bhima Prabhu.
Haribol Prabhu, thank you for
Hare Krishna.
engaging us so early in the class. It's very nice. It keeps us on our feet. I'm not sure whether I understood clearly what your question is, but I have found personally that, when one, Prabhupada always said this is the science of self-realization. And when we realize how material nature is working, I remember Adi Purush himself was describing, even though I took some biology, he reminded me that, you've got this mitochondria, you've got billions of mitochondria who are running the billions of cells in our body. Our very body, the yantra, the machine that we inhabit, is material nature at work with no help of our own. Our mind did not create it. Our mind does not make it work, put it together. In fact, our involuntary muscles like the heart beat on their own. This is material nature at work. And when we humble ourselves down enough to understand that we are in a yantra, in the physical body, a machine, we have to understand, we have to come to that understanding, of course, is who made this machine. We start to have this sort of childlike wonder as to the fact of what's going on in the world, the nature around us in general, the trees, the sun, how it's all synergistically working together. And then we come to understand that there's a personality behind it. And we go from this sort of Paramatma view of Krishna in everything to understanding that once we start surrendering to Krishna in this wonder, in this understanding scientifically, that we are simply within this magic world that Krishna has created. But then all of a sudden, when we surrender, we start feeling that Krishna starts reciprocating with us by virtue of our surrender. That it comes a day by day thing that when we're engaged in his service wholeheartedly, that Krishna makes arrangements not so much to make things easier, but that, as Adi Purush once again said, it's almost like Krishna sends people out on stage. You're on stage and you have a play, a line, a role, and then people enter and exit like a stage. I don't know if I'm breaking up here. Can I be heard?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so it's almost like we see Krishna at work, reciprocating on a moment by moment basis, so that that Leela of Krishna's dealing with a surrendered soul based on the amount that we give way to Krishna in our lives. I don't know. Is that what you are talking about as far as
Yes, I mean, Prabhu, thank you for this reflection that you're sharing, but just seeing Krishna's hand in both the ups and the downs. One of the verses, my favorite verses in Srimad Bhagavatam that I'll share that came to me when I read this specific purport is, I'm sure everyone has heard the famous verse 10, Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 14th chapter, verse 8. Tate nukampam susamiksamano bunjai patma kritam vipakam hridvagva purbir vidadam namaste chivetayo mukti padese dayabak. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances within his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. And I feel this verse here really what we're striving for as devotees is to move into this consciousness where it's so eloquently spoken that as we're going through the ups and the downs, but particularly it's more challenging at times to go through the downs of life, but seeing, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has pointed out, we perceive the Lord to be their cause, that the Lord has a hand in taking the sadhaka through the things that they have to go through based on their past, but still offering obeisance in their heart, words, and body. Again, their whole life is still dedicated to Krishna and building that relationship. This is very much a verse that's personally one of my favorites, and one that I've come to often during challenging times in my life to remind myself of the consciousness that the elevated devotees, they always have in their heart, despite what challenges they may be going through. So this is a verse that I wanted to share in connection specifically with this text. And we see now in the next verse that Uddhava, he's speaking to both Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai, and he's now laying out that Krishna is not your son alone, right? And if we now think back to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also in the chapter of confidential knowledge of chapter 9, Krishna says, I am the father of this universe, the mother, the support, and the grandsire. I am the object of knowledge, the purifier, and the syllable Om. I am also the Rig, Sama, and Yajur Vedas. So this is chapter 9, verse 17 in the Bhagavad Gita. So again, Krishna is declaring this here, that again, he is, as the Srimad Bhagavatam has also reiterated, the son, soul, father, mother of everyone. And again, it's always nice to make these connections of where we see it in Srimad Bhagavatam and coming back to Bhagavad Gita. So those are these two specific verses have come to me when we were specifically reading these verses here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And now we'll spend most of our time looking at 10:46:43, which is the next one, where if we see in the purport, Prabhupada, he's specifically mentioning that Nanda and Yashoda are bringing them to a more philosophical plane, right? And I think of this often when we are sharing bhakti with others, because one thing that was very much impressed upon me earlier in my Krishna consciousness is that it's very important there's a role for knowledge and gyan in our bhakti. I remember when I was back in 2005, I was listening to Garuda Prabhu, and something that just stayed with me is that he says jnana should be our foundation. It should always be the pillar of our bhakti, right? And so that and to me, this is what Uddhava is right now doing when he's speaking to Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. He's, there's the element of feeling and being and acknowledging our emotions, but right now he's trying to take them to a more holistic understanding of Krishna and Krishna's place, not just as his son, but the son of all, the father of all, the mother, and for everyone. And so as devotees, I think about the application of what we're trying to understand for ourselves here is that as devotees trying to share bhakti, it's so important. I see that when we're explaining philosophy, is to consider the kala desha patra, the time, place, and circumstance of when we bring in this idea of the philosophical plane in our sharing of bhakti and Krishna consciousness, because so many times we see that in the enthusiasm of devotees, it's sometimes we throw out the philosophy, but sometimes it's maybe not the right time, place, or circumstance. And so I very much am appreciating here Uddhava's approach here, that he's been talking about many aspects of Krishna, but right now he's going into the omnipresence, omnipotent quality of Krishna, that he has many, many roles, is both within us and external to us. And I was thinking that knowledge, it's so critical in our spiritual life, because it helps develop, it brings us a sense of peace. It helps control our mind and our senses when they're reeling, when we can't make sense of a situation. And the knowledge also gives us a bigger picture by which we can look at the world, and it allows us to zoom out and gives us a different lens by which we look at the world. And so this was something very much that I was appreciating when I was looking at this verse, where it was acknowledging that Uddhava was bringing Yashoda and Nanda to the philosophical plane, is as devotees, when we're also speaking philosophy, that we could always just try to be more mindful of this time, place, circumstance of when we're bringing this forward. And we see here that, again, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9:29, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service to me in devotion is in me, and am I also a friend to him. So I was reflecting, again, reading this section, but specifically when we speak about Krishna, the vastness, the greatness, Krishna is both personal. He's always with us. He's within us. We are within him. He's protecting us. The devotee never perishes. Again, we're reading these all the time as sadhakas, and many times we may sometimes forget about this or even doubt this. Right. And I ask myself, why is it that many times we may forget or even doubt this? And one aspect that I was thinking about is that in our spiritual life, not only is there the aspect of, everyone has probably heard, we have Shravanam, where we hear, and in this Bhagavatam class, we also do tremendous Mananam, where we meditate, right, on what is coming to us. But then the last aspect is Nididhyasanam, where we're applying the information that's being given to us. And for me, in my journey, I'm always I know very little, but I'm just trying to always be in the space of application, because I feel like unless we're really making a conscious and consistent effort of application, we're closing ourselves off to experiences of these truths. And so I was also reflecting that there's two theories for how we advance in our spiritual life. One is I must act. So it's based on my desire and my endeavor. And that second aspect is I must receive. So this I must receive is based on Krishna's reciprocation and mercy. And we have to move into this I must receive mindset, which is sometimes difficult, like not difficult, but sometimes we often forget, or at least myself, that I'm working in this receiver mindset, that we have to move into. Recently, I was listening to Satchidananda Swami on his Vyas Puja. He was giving a class, and he was talking about the idea of having confidence and faith in miracles that Krishna has in our life. And so I termed it as, we have to move into this miracle mindset of knowing that in any kind of struggle, that the devotee happily continues knowing that anything is possible with Krishna's help. So the application that I was of thinking of this is very much connected to this. We have to remain in the space of possibility or having this miracle mindset. And so a question for all of us to consider, because it's Krishna gives his mercy in 6 ways, and I'll just quickly review that before we can go to just some reflections and discussions. But the 6 ways that I've read and understood that Krishna gives his mercy. So the first is Vatsalya Kripa, and that is experience. We see an example of that as Prahlad Maharaj, after his own father turned against him. Vatsalya Kripa. So we see that after uh, Krishna killed Hiranyakashipu, he then put Prahlad Maharaj on his lap. And what did he do? He licked him, right? So the lion, as a lion licks the cub, the lion takes care of him and took him in his lap. So again, that is an example of Vatsalya Kripa. The second way Krishna gives his mercy is Abhay Pradhan. So he gives fearlessness to his devotees. And we see this example practically in the example of Vibhishan. So Ram made him completely fearless so that he could stand up so that he could stand up to his brother Ravana. And so that's an example of Abhaya Pradhan. The third way that Krishna gives us his mercy is Atati Nirvartanam. He removes all worries and stresses of the devotee. And so an example that I was reflecting on for this is we see Gajendra. The Lord removed all his worries as he was dragged in and held by the crocodile, right? So this pastime is a really amazing one because we see that the crocodile is eventually, he's winning for the first part of the battle because he's in his position of strength in the water. But again, we see that Krishna eventually removes all of the worries and stresses by Gajendra after Gajendra fully surrenders. And so this idea of surrendering, that once we really are working on this aspect of surrender, that Krishna takes our worries and our stresses. This fourth element of Krishna's mercy is Adhoryat. So he gives magnanimity and compassion. And so a very nice example of this for us to remember is where he supplied Draupadi with endless amount of sari to protect her and from her being disrobed. And we see in this example that we see such amazing the magnanimity and compassion from Krishna in this example. The fifth is Aga Shashanath. So Krishna gives his mercy, the fifth way. He takes away the sins from a devotee and even the inclination to do further sin. And we see this as an example of Ahalya. So she unknowingly was cursed by her husband after there was a situation that she was sleeping with someone else who was not her husband, and she was cursed to become a stone. But Krishna absorbed all her sins by touching her when Ahalya touched his lotus feet. And then the last example of Krishna's mercies, Aganita Shreya. He gives unlimited prosperity. Prosperity, people can think of many ways, but one way to think about it is wealth. And so the question that I wanted for all of us to reflect on and to think about is, have we ourselves in our path of devotional life experienced Krishna's these ways that Krishna's provided us mercy, right? And that's one thing to reflect on. But that if we haven't, it's really an opportunity for us to encourage to move into this, the idea that I wanted to get through for all of us today is moving into this miracle mindset of being open to Krishna's mercy, right? And so the remainder of the class, what I wanted us to think about is this how do we move into this, because one amazing point that Satyanandan Swami was making is that the person that believes that there's no miracles is right, and the new bhakta, beaming with enthusiasm and vigor experience, who's experiencing happiness, they're also right. So again, for us as sadhakas, I'm always thinking about how am I trying to get back into or stay in this miracle mindset that's so vital for our day-to-day devotional service. And so what I wanted us to do as an opportunity for a reflection exercise, and then we can speak about it, is to reflect back on a time where we were beaming with enthusiasm in our spiritual life, and think about why we were beaming. And again, for me, it's always been at a time where I've been in that space of having that miracle mindset. That's been the common thread when I look back at when I'm beaming with enthusiasm. And then as we should take the time to reflect on these and hold on to these experiences in our mindset, because again, when we look at, I work day to day in the world of healthcare and medicine as a pediatrician, but we're always, one aspect that we're always trying to talk about with our patients and families and is this idea of just positive psychology. But the way positive psychology we can practically do is we're increasing everyone's confidence by reflecting back on past experiences. So this idea of improving one's self-efficacy. And we do that by going back to past times of success. So bringing those in to the current time so that we can also build our confidence and feel that whatever a situation we're in, we have the confidence to do it and that we can be successful. And here we have the greatest, most powerful individual on our side, Sri Krishna, to assist us. But again, going back to those times in our life where we've really experienced this enthusiasm, this miracle mindset. And let us remember these. Let us remember these these instances in our spiritual life. And so really, again, many times, we see in this chapter of the devotees in Vrindavan, they really are at the core of their heart, they're carrying this hope against all hope because they really want to be with Krishna. They're just missing Krishna so much. And this hope against all hope is very much something that we've heard about as devotees. And for me, I was just reflecting on the way we bring in this space of maintaining our hope day to day is in our spiritual life, is trying to build back our faith of having miracles happen in our spiritual life. So on that note, I wanted to take the opportunity to receive any thoughts, questions, reflections, or comments. I see Adipurusha Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. I apologize. This isn't exactly the direction you're steering the discussion in, but I can't help but think, what are you doing? Here they are in a beautiful mood of intense, loving separation from Krishna, and you say, it's okay, he's God, he's not your son, he's not your lover, and I'm thinking, what is he doing? It seems like contrary to everything we've been hearing all along about how Yoga Maya is so wonderful and absorbing and intense, and the loving feelings are there for like a paramour or like a child, and then he just, no, don't worry, he's God. You don't have to. It seems terrible. How does it? I can't remember reading this before, but how does it land with them? Do they say, "Get away from us"? We don't want to hear this stuff about him being God. We just love him, or do they? Are they consoled? What happens? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yes,
Did you
Prabhu.
have-
I did go on further to read in this because I was really wondering, how are they going to respond to this?
Yeah.
Right? And we see that at least the direction that Prabhupada moved in for the remainder of this chapter, which is not too much longer, it's a few more verses, is the residents of Vrindavan, they move into a space of they actually move into a space of doing service, practical service, where they began, they worship their deities, and they began churning yogurt into butter. And it just has a description of them going into service, but also while they're doing their service, they're still remaining in that space of smaranam where they're remembering Krishna. And so it is very instructive to see how they're responding, in this situation to Uddhava, who's just cutting right through to, in one sense, appealing to their emotions. But thank you for that question. That is very valid at a time, and again, I was thinking in that similar context, which is why I mentioned this idea that when we're sharing, sharing bhakti, to just always take a minute to be mindful of our time, place, circumstance, because I think it very much, there's a time where we need to appeal to emotions because they're very real, and then there's also a time where a gentle stretching, I call it, whenever we bring in the philosophy, we're trying to stretch ourselves and others to come to a higher level of understanding. So thank you. Bhima Prabhu has his hand up. And if someone can just help me with the hands, because I can't see all the
Does
screens.
anybody else? Is anybody else got their hand up or have a question
No.
first?
You go.
I think it's you, Prabhu.
Okay. So on that point, it's always fascinating and heartening. Even when you began the class by singing Jaya Radha Madhava, and then we remember that Krishna's running, God's running on the banks of the Jamuna, and he's playing in the groves, and he's very dear to Yashoda. We ourselves have to sort of like go from, okay, I'm trying to surrender, I'm trying to obey. With myself, it's trying to obey, like that first awe and reverence. But then when we sing Jaya Radha Madhava, we actually have to abandon that God status and viewing him from a distance, and all of a sudden we're intimately involved with his pastimes of running on the banks of the Jamuna. And then I think to myself, when I was a kid, I was lucky enough to be brought up in the country and running through the fields and stuff, and the abandonment, the fun, the laughter with your friends while you're playing with the cows. That I think to myself, Krishna has to also be someone who forgets that he's God. So, which is incredible that Krishna, in order to really enjoy himself with the cowherd boys, with the cowherd girls, with Mother Yashoda, to really enjoy himself, he has to abandon who he, I guess, as Uddhava is saying, who he is in essence. So my question is if Yoga Maya is powerful enough to help Krishna forget who he is, and then to abandon himself to the idea that I'm a little child being chased by Mother Yashoda with a stick, and so I get to experience the flavor, the rasa, the feeling of a little child's fear that has love attached to it, love and fear, love for my mother and fear of her reprimand. Doesn't that make Yoga Maya more powerful than Krishna? If she has the power to make him forget himself so that he can enjoy himself, doesn't that make her as powerful as he is? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thank you for this question, and just really just expanding on the prayers of Jaya Radha Madhava. I think it's really it's always a great opportunity to reflect on the prayers that we are singing on a regular basis. And my understanding is Yoga Maya is that internal potency or that internal Shakti of Krishna. And so because it's that internal potency or Shakti of Krishna, it's still subservient. Krishna is using his own energy, that internal Shakti energy, to arrange a particular situation so that his leelas can unfold and he can experience the true emotions. So that's the way I would understand. If everyone has any reflections on that specific point of yoga being more powerful, I think of it as it's actually one of Krishna's internal Shakti, is that Yoga Maya potency, and that it is still under Krishna's control to facilitate Leela. But thank you, Bhima.
Hare Krishna. Yes, I agree, Rasheshvara Madhava Prabhu. This is Damodar Priya. I've also heard that in the context of, I read a book called Bhakti Shakti by Pranada Kamtoy, and she goes into like explaining very similar to what you just said, in the sense that yes, like just like as Radha can be considered, you know, Krishna's other whole, like they're whole in each other, but she's still serving Krishna, and her mood is always to serve Krishna. So Yoga Maya is just using the potency which is coming from Krishna to serve Krishna in her greatest love and service. And he's always able to pull out of that. You know what I mean? Like if needed, he can always pull out, and he knows that he's God, and he does things, and then he goes back into it. So that's my understanding as well. And then Anandi wrote in the chat, it's like Matrix's Shakti, the power of letters. So you'd have to watch the Matrix movie to understand that. But I just wanted to reflect on what you had originally kind of given us in terms of a reflection of like getting into that mood of miracles, and how we can get back into the enthusiasm that we first had when we were first coming into bhakti. And in my personal experience, one of the easiest ways that I can go into that is by interacting with children, and having that interaction with children about talking about Krishna, because they really get the essence, right? Like for them, it's really simple. It's like, Krishna loves me. Krishna's the best. He's like my super best friend. Like, let's sing about Krishna. Let's have fun about Krishna. And they just want to like, just be joyful in Krishna consciousness. So, yeah, to me, like interacting with them, answering their questions, like singing songs with them, that's when I really start getting that enthusiasm. So thank you so much for that reflection question.
Yeah, thank you. And for me, one of the reasons that I'm in the area of pediatrics is to put myself in the environment where you are constantly, you know, as I think Bhima Prabhu was speaking about yesterday, you know, in the childlike mindset, not childish, but childlike. And I think it's really important to continuously have that energy around us on a regular basis to come back, because there's a purity and a simplicity that really can help us progress in our spiritual life. So thank you so much for bringing that forward too, because I very much resonate with it.
Thank you, Rasesa Madhava Prabhu. Thanks everyone for your reflections and questions. Is Krishna God who is forgetting that he is a boy? Or Krishna is a boy who is forgetting that he is God, so that he can enjoy the loving exchanges? You know, that was my reflection. I don't know if I'm making sense. Rasesa Madhava Prabhu, thank you for making a childlike. You're a true bhakti pediatrician. You know your trade, Prabhu. The class was very simple, very shastric. You know, you always referred to Shastra answering the questions. That was very nice. Your answers made sense. Your points made sense. Thank you. I can't believe you know the whole thing. Everybody just gives the first line. And you told us the whole thing in the meter. That was far out. Okay, it's Russian time. You resume with Krishna. Well,
Ananda Shimaya Sadhu Kaviragya Govinda Adi Purusha Namamrtami Govinda Adi Purusha Namamrtami Govinda Adi Purusha. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Shri Shiranam Muladhara ki jai, Shri Gaur Chandra ki jai, Rasesa Madhava Prabhu ki jai. Wonderful, wonderful class. I feel 100% convinced that there is God and that God is Krishna. God is the boy who is playing with his friends. And I want to be childlike.
Yeah, and let us
I'm going to
remember
be
that.
childlike for about 15 minutes until I dive back into Maya. But thank you for that, Rasesa Madhava Prabhu, for dipping us into Krishna Bhakti.
Yeah, and
So
remembering
nice.
that, the application of the philosophy really much is attached to just trying to stay in this mindset of this miracle mindset, and that the enthusiasm reflected is both. It's reflecting in both enthusiasm and patience, and not only remembering our own miracles that have happened in our own life, but I'm always thinking about spending time with devotees that hold on to that miracle mindset and believing in miracles. That is really critical, because we actually know devotees, and we say, hey, they're always in possibility mindset. And so we should think about, always like running to that association as a final point to end.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. I forget
Prabhu,
what I
I
was
have a
gonna say.
question. I have a question for Prabhu before he leaves.
Yes. Go ahead, Bhima Prabhu.
Prabhu, as a doctor, obviously going through med school, studying chemistry, organic chemistry, and biology, were you probably you were brought up in Krishna consciousness, or perhaps were surrounded it, or did you find that science itself was a very faith inspiring I remember in college when I was in pre-med nutrition until I took organic chemistry, but I remember studying the valences of atoms and how atomic energy works and physics and then of course jumping into quantum physics a little bit, as a layman, and just becoming completely convinced that everything was sort of like a matrix, that it was all set up, that we are just a part of this grand machine, and it really solidified my faith that there is a God, that God is personal because we are persons, etc., etc. Did you find that to be true with your scientific studies, that it did nothing but to bolster your belief in miracles, the fact that everything, our very makeup is a miracle?
Yes, Prabhu, thank you for bringing this up. I think, yeah, when you go into, the more detailed you go into kind of the biology, the atoms and the chemistry, you have more time to reflect on where this is all coming from. And I know we haven't spoken about it, but my journey in the sense of finding bhakti, although there were seeds planted by my family members when I was younger, it was really coming into the contact of devotees who could really, I think it's important to have a understanding of the science of bhakti, because once we see that there's again, like everything, you do the experiment, there's a hypothesis, there's a process, and then there's an experience. And so I think we should always be putting the experiment of Krishna consciousness to the test in our own life, because that's in fact what really bolsters the faith that's based on practical realization rather than theory. And again, this is why my point of always coming back to application is so important, because the Shravanam and the Mananam are really important, but if we don't get to that point of application, then we're not doing the science justice of bhakti.
Thank you. Bhima Neo. Neo Bhima Prabhu. Hare Krishna. He took the pill, he dropped out. Okay.
Can I
It's
do
so
one
funny.
last thing? Can we just give appreciation for the fact that a devotee who has been just joining us through YouTube this whole time is finally kind of coming into our Zoom family. Not only did he show up to classes, but now he's giving a class. Like, talk about quick progression into like our Zoom family. So it's been great, Raseshwara Madhava Prabhu. So
No,
glad
thank
that you're
you.
here.
I want to personally coming in person and Zoom. I mean, obviously, while I'm listening in the mornings, it's really there's a whole level of intimacy and connection when we can see each other, or at least I mean, I always see you and what you're speaking, but that kind of reciprocation. Anyways,
Yeah,
it was so
we're
nice to
all
hear
here
everyone.
for depth. We're all here for depth and intimacy.
Yeah. It's really so critical. And honestly, I really see this group that regularly comes out because again, I'm part of the group in the mornings. It's such a special group that comes together every morning for Bhagavatam class. And I can see because of the, you can see through the jokes, through the laughs, through the poking of each other. There's real, there's rasa there.
Yeah, we're only poking on one person. Right?
But he does it to himself. He'll ask the question and then he'll leave, and then he did it both times today. It was so funny.
Yeah, he does it to himself, exactly. Right.
Anyways, I
Okay.
really appreciate all the reflections from everyone every week, and such great pearls to take away in our day to day.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a wonderful Sunday, everybody. Go to the temple, dance and chant for Krishna, take prasadam for Krishna, cut the line for Krishna, throw your hands up in the air.
Let's make sure he shows up to more appointments. We're all children here. We need to see the doctor, and the doctor has to be there for appointments. So once a week at least, giving class.
Yeah.
For the health of us children.
Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Thank you again, Anand Bihari, for the opportunity.